Do you use Google because it's the best possible product? Or do you use it because the company has spent incredible amounts of money to make sure that it winds up in front of you in your daily life? This is the question that's being argued literally right now, starting a couple hours ago, in a Washington, D.C. courtroom. And it's the same courthouse that in the past has decided and brought big judgments against Microsoft for bundling its hardware and its software together, and once upon a time against AT&T, which was so enormous that that court decided to break up the company into little bits. So right now, these same kinds of issues are being, not saying exactly the same because it's a very different world, but a set of issues are being discussed right now. And the big question is basically whether it's okay for Google to do what they do, which is pay companies like Apple and other handset makers and browser makers like Mozilla to be the default search engine that you get when you buy that software or hardware. Now, Google says, we didn't come up with this business model. Apple chooses to pay, to charge for that kind of placement, and we just aggressively distribute our stuff as well as we can. They also argue, I talked to the chief legal officer, and he argues that even when you give people a choice like the EU is requiring now, where in the EU, if you buy a new phone, it doesn't come with anything pre-installed in terms of a search engine. You have to choose. He says, even in those cases, the vast majority of people do choose Google. But the government argues that for 12 years, the company has been pushing themselves out as the default search engine so much that the reason we are all sort of acclimated to using it all the time is in part because of these tactics. And so what's interesting is that this is happening at the very moment that search engines are actually, in a way, under threat, because we're entering the era of ChatGPT and Google's Bard and these other big large language model AI-powered chatbots that are going to change the whole game of search engines. And so it may not even be that we use them in a couple of years. So it's always the way that the law kind of, is always a little bit behind tech in this way. But what's interesting, and the reason that people here in Silicon Valley and San Francisco care so much about this, is because as the competition in that new world, heats up, and this whole world of deals and placements and contracts and partnerships becomes part of how that competition gets waged, is the government going to allow that in future, or can companies here go for it in this kind of fundamental way, the way that they have in the past, the way that Google certainly has been able to? This is the question being decided right now. So it sounds mundane, it sounds like it sort of won't affect you, but it actually has a huge effect on historic power over information and how we access it, which has been the purview of companies like Google with almost no oversight until now.